Welcome, everyone, to Good Friends, Strong Families podcast. I'm Angela,
And I'm Anna.
and we're here to talk this month about a really great topic. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think we forget about this a lot, but we're going to talk today about mental health is prevention, how mental health is prevention. Before we jump in, I want to mention this that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. That's why we decided to start working on this whenever you're actually listening to it. It's really just a good opportunity for us to just kind of put a pin in it and talk about this really important topic. But we just wanted to have a conversation because of that. It's something that people talk about all the time. I know when my kids were younger, we never talked about that in terms of what parents were learning or like what kids are learning in school or whatever, but it's really something about that everybody's talking about. But Anna, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. But I am not always sure that we mean the same thing when we talk about mental health. We use that a lot, but I'm not really sure that we always know that. We're
Yeah, I
talking
agree.
about it a
I feel like
lot,
it's
but
become more of like a catchphrase. And so it's just kind of like people throw out mental health. And sometimes you're like, are we
yes.
talking about the same thing? And then also we're talking about it more than ever, you could say. And yet you could also say that our kids are struggling more than ever. So what,
No, they're fully struggling more than you're absolutely right.
yeah, so where's there's a disconnect because we think like we're going to bring awareness to an issue and we're going to solve the problem. We're bringing awareness and we're talking about it, but we're not fixing it. And
No,
we as
right.
parents, I mean, I know that like I want better for my kids. I want them to have tools and resources available to them that like we never heard of when we were kids, right? So how can we bridge that gap? That's kind of like what we want to talk about.
Yeah, because we keep talking about it more, but we don't see it getting better according to the data. I want to read a little bit about this data because this is really interesting. This data, this particular one comes from CDC's most recent youth risk behavior survey. So listen to this, friends. 40% of high school students report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. You know what? Okay, for real, I'm looking at the word like you might maybe are stuck on the 40%. You know what I'm stuck on? The word persistent. So it's not even just like
Yeah, I caught
kids,
that too.
yeah. It's persistent. It's not even like kids, but it's like it persists. They feel sad. They feel hopeless. And this really struck me
Yeah,
a couple
that
of
caught
years
me
ago.
too.
Get this, a couple of years ago, when this first started coming out, this particular piece of data talked about how for girls, it's actually higher, that more than half of teen girls report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. More than half, more than half. So it's not
Yeah.
small. It's not small. And we talk about mental health, but really we have to figure out what exactly are we talking about. And then as family coaches, I think Anna, you and I can like add a little bit to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to be really clear that um again, under the umbrella of mental health, again, like we want to define that first and foremost, but we also want to say that there are actual mental health diagnoses that are beyond this conversation of just
Yeah.
like parents wanting to help their kids build stronger mental health. And there's a time and a place for intervention and professional support. And so this conversation is not in place of professional support.
Right.
Um,
100%.
but for just your average parent of a teen who hears that report about, the CDC report and goes, "Oh my gosh, like I can't ignore that. What can I do in my
Yes.
home, in my relationship with my child to, you know, keep them from being one of those in the statistic?" And or if they're there, what can we do to help them build a stronger ability to handle the ups and downs of life? Because those are going to happen.
Well, and let me just say this too, because as a parent, you and I have really made it a point to not like jump to conclusions. So it's not that we don't look at this and we say, wow, these numbers are going up, kind of like with the advent of the phone. Like we know that there. So I just want to make the point if and as people are jumping to, well, it must be because of their phone. Yes, I'm sure contributing factors, but we don't want to be glib. We don't want to just come up with like oh, just take away their phone or no, we really want to talk about we are going to talk about what are the actual things we can do. And to also make the point, when we do these podcasts, it's part of a series. We also do on Facebook, Delta Prevention does Prevention in My Kitchen. We also have live classes. We design those specifically so we can give you a little taste of it here, but then you can get more support elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But you said that we define mental health. Can you define it? Because I think that will really help people to see, okay, what are we talking about here?
Yes, this is what we are talking about. So the CDC defines mental health as including emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And it says it affects how we think, feel, relate to others, handle stress, and make decisions. So we're going to make that really simple. Mental health is your ability to think, feel, relate, and handle life.
That's really good.
So this isn't just theory, it's in prevention science. And in programs like the Strengthening Families program, we know that three things consistently protect our kids: strong relationships, clear
Yep.
expectations, and knowing what's going on in their lives. So this has never been and will never be about doing everything perfectly, because we would all fail that test.
100%.
It's about building the right things consistently. And so we just want to bridge the gap from we've increased awareness. We all know mental health is a really big deal.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so what's the next step? We want to increase our skills and our children's skills.
Well, I think that's a really important point because a lot of times, and it's true, schools talk a lot about mental health. They actually have even built into whether we're talking about elementary kids, even kindergarten. I mean, they've really been good about building in some of the skills kids need. But the reality is that these particular types of skills that you're going to need in order to really set yourself up to have some really good mental health outcomes. And I'm thinking in terms of like depression, anxiety, being able to navigate all those things that you were talking about. Those types of skills, and this is important, friends, for you to hear, are actually better practiced at home because some I want to say like situational awareness, but they need a parenting adult to help them to navigate those things in a deeper way than we can get to in school. And then the other thing is that it's going to take them understanding who they are, and you find that out at home.
Right,
So we definitely want our parenting adults to be able to not only learn the skills for themselves, but to pass those on to their kids.
right. And so as parents, one of the first things that I think we can kind of like stop and do a little check-in with ourselves
Mm,
is when our kids are struggling with something. It's really easy as parents to want to step in and kind of fix it, right? We like, how many parents are going to say, I want my kid to have a better life than me or an easier life than me. I don't want them to have the difficulties that I had, right? Like that's just something that we want to do, right? We want to protect our kids, but we also need to prepare our kids. And we want them to have a strength to handle life. And unfortunately, strength is built in the struggle. And
I
so
hate that you said that, and yet I feel like you should say it again.
strength is built in the struggle.
Ugh.
And so if we want to build those skills, it's going to be a little uncomfortable for them and for us. But like Angela was talking about, like in home practice, that's where they build the skill.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of opportunities in our day-to-day life, in our home life. Like we are not under the the guise of like, oh, everybody's just sitting in bliss at home with their families 24/7. Like there's opportunities, there's going to be disagreements, there's miscommunication, there's just emotionally, your emotions will fluctuate. Um, Life will hand you enough opportunity. And so we want to know how to build skills and strength in
That
those
makes me laugh.
opportunities.
That part makes me laugh. So if it's built in the struggle and then life gives you all the opportunity you need in order to build it, it means we're like living in the struggle. But I think that's a really good point because, again, okay, these are skills. Sure, they can be taught at school and they are taught at school and they're taught in different places, but they have to be practiced continuously. And it has to be something that we walk through. And so when you think about what that looks like, how do you actually set it up where you can help kids to learn how to do it? So we figured, this is for everybody, we figured that we would give people a starting point in every one of those four areas that we talked about so that you actually will have an opportunity to practice. And then we're going to continuously add to whatever those things are in the other classes that we offer, whether it's prevention in my kitchen or a live class or whatever. So then you should, by the end of being able to watch all of those, have kind of like a bucket of ways that you can help kids to do that.
Right, exactly. So again, those four areas are how kids think,
Yep.
how they handle their feelings,
Yep.
how they connect,
Yep.
and how they handle life when it's hard.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
So
So
what does
talk
thinking
about
mean?
thinking. Talk about
Yeah.
thinking.
So thinking is problem solving.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's twofold. One, I think we have to acknowledge that we have our internal thinking, our thoughts that like we may never voice.
Yeah.
And because of that, we may not actually know what is running on replay in our kids' minds. And so this is something that we have to have an open and honest conversation. And as parents, that that falls on us. Like if our kids aren't talking about it, we have to talk about it.
Yes.
And so we love with the Strengthening Families, we love the concept from Dr. Amen called stomping the ants.
I
And
love that,
ants stands for automatic negative thoughts.
which we all have.
Yes, yes. So again, this is something, if you haven't addressed this concept, please, please do. It is simple in concept. It is much more difficult in practice, just to
Hey,
constantly catch them when they pop up.
here's something really interesting. So, two things about that. So, the first thing is now that you're talking about this, and I love automatic negative thoughts. You have them, I have them, we all have them. I always think that thought doesn't belong to me unless I keep it. I mean, we all
Yep.
think really dumb things at times. You know what I'm saying? Like the thought just comes across. It doesn't belong to me. That thought just, my brain sometimes thinks of stupid things, that thought doesn't belong to me unless I decide to take it, like feed on it or like nurture that thought or whatever. Okay, so, but then that's true of kids too. They also have automatic negative thoughts and that can impede their ability. When you're talking about mental health, when if our kids have like these circular thoughts that keep going and going and going and going and going in their brain and they continuously feed them, that becomes reality for them. That can increase their anxiety, can increase their depression. But I want to just say something. So you said something that I thought, interesting. You said sometimes we like to jump in and help. In this situation, if we jumped in and helped, we would not be allowing them to then learn how to handle it in that hard part.
Right.
That's not good because then how will they grow? How will they be able to pull out? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
That's good.
And I think it's something again, you're teaching them and you're giving them guidance. So that might look like, and again, some of these thoughts are spoken out loud, right? So
Mm,
they might say, I can never get this right, or I always mess up, or they might kind of pour out of their mouth. And so we can step in and say, oh, identify it, right? That's an automatic negative thought.
that's
We bring
good.
truth to it, and then we help them. We don't necessarily, I mean, it depends on the age and it depends on a lot of things, but I think twofold is instead of jumping to think this instead, say, hey, what is true? Like give them prompts to help them think through a replacement thought.
Mm,
And again, if necessary, maybe you can provide them one, but don't jump to do that first. Say,
mm,
hey, you just said you can never get anything right. Is that true? And so we want them to, because thinking is problem solving.
mm,
It's when they get stuck, when something is hard, right? Like, I mean, think about it. Depending on the age and stage, right? Like, they may be struggling learning how to tie their shoe. They may not be able to solve a math problem. They may, like, how many times do we get stuck? And if we quit, then we never achieve the next step. But if we push through, we figure it out. And so that's
mm.
really breaking that process down for our kids and helping them
That's
like,
so good.
well, what else can you try? And again, that just those simple questions instead of like, why don't you do this? Or why didn't you try it this way? Why didn't, um, giving them the opportunity to stop and think through, oh, well, I didn't try it this way, or I didn't try that, or, I've been trying the same way over and over and over, and I'm building in frustration versus like, maybe this isn't the best way to solve this. Maybe I do need to try this. So again, you're kind of like the guide through that process and really try to hold back the answers unless
Mm.
absolutely necessary. That's what I would say. What do you
Well, I
think?
like that because you're saying you're so in my I'm changing what's in my mouth. I think that's a really good point. Like I think as a parent, sometimes I look at my kids and I talk the way I talk. But what you're saying is, okay, but there are some ways, there are some things that you can say that's going to help them move a little closer to, for example, solving their problem or thinking differently about the problem or trying in a different way. And so it's not necessarily, this is what I'm getting from what you're talking about. Gosh, I feel like I can't believe this is almost hitting me over the head. We began this conversation talking about how we can help them with their skills, but the truth is that if we are coaches, and we've always said that we coach our kids, we're parent coaches who teach parents to coach their own kids, right? If that's the case, then actually we're not just changing their skills, we're changing what comes out of our mouth.
Oh, absolutely. And not knowing the history of every parent that's going to listen to this, I mean, we are very open and honest that like we don't have it all. We're not telling you these skills because we started with these skills day one. We still have areas where we're still constantly trying to like reevaluate and as our kids grow and reach new milestones in life, new opportunities arise for us to, to be challenged by these
A
skills.
hundred percent. A
So it
hundred percent.
100% is like, wow, like I wish I would have known this when I was a kid, but I wish I also would have known it when my kids were, 15 years younger than they are now. Um,
It's so crazy the things that we learn when our kids are grown up.
yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly. Which is
no,
why
this
we
is
love
true.
doing this because I mean, we never stop being parents, let's be real, but also we just love being able to help other parents do even better
100%.
than we've achieved.
Yeah, exactly. And like no, listen, no shade to us because as coaches, we learned things that people don't have the opportunity to learn necessarily. And there's a real honor in that. We were able to do that. There's a real honor in that. Now, whether or not like whether or not we were able to always be able to do the right thing, we can actually help families, we got to learn a lot. We can help them to learn faster than we did. And that's why you and I talk about like how many times we screwed up.
Exactly.
All right. So we talked about thinking. I want to talk about the feeling piece, right?
Yeah.
Because we use this term all the time, emotional regulation. And the truth about emotional regulation is this is a skill. It has to be taught in the fire. It
Hmm.
has to be taught like in the moment. We give them the skills when it's calm and quiet, and then they practice the skills when it's not calm and quiet because
Right.
emotional regulation is, can you regulate your emotions in the moment that you need it? So everybody, whether you're a kid or an adult, is going to have big feelings. Like there are things that And you know, even as adults, there are people that we know right this minute. We could probably name names, but we won't. But there are people that we know they cannot control themselves emotionally in like certain public situations or whatever. And the truth
Right.
is, we need our kids to be able to know how to navigate those. So we need them to understand what to do when you have those feelings. That is only, friends, going to serve them. And just, I know in my life, I was taught, and you could probably speak to this too, Anna, but I was taught more like there are only two options. You either like shut your feelings down or you let them explode. And let me just say, I don't think I was ever taught either of those things explicitly. I was
Oh,
taught
right.
those things because of other people's reactions. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I was only ever told that I wore my feelings on my sleeve. Oh, but you always wear your feelings on your sleeve. The message that I got is that I should not be then sharing my feelings. That is not how you train a child or teach
Hmm.
a child to deal with what are big feelings, because all that taught me is, oh, other people don't want to hear about my feelings. So, because I'm feeling them so big, I'm going to need to stuff them because I don't want other people. Or then there comes a point where they could just explode. And we know lots of people who just cannot hold their feelings long and then they just
Well, and
explode.
I think you could also say, and I don't know that this is true 100% of the time, but I can think of instances in my life where this was the case where for whatever reason, for the message was sent to you or to me that like
Mm.
you're like to shut your feelings down, right? But one can only do that for so long and
Right.
then they will explode.
100%.
Versus, hey, you these feelings are real. They're there, you're experiencing them. So
Yeah.
what do we do? How do we process them? How do we metabolize them? And that I don't know. Like when I see people who are so well regulated, I'm like, where did they learn that? You know what I mean? Like, because
Well,
it wasn't modeled or taught
yeah.
to me as a
Now,
child.
okay, but here's the good news, and this is true, friends. We teach this in Strengthening Families. We literally teach you to sit with kids and help them to identify what is the feeling that you're feeling. By the way, that's another thing you need to be able to do is identify what is this feeling. Frustration might come out as anger. Is it
Right.
frustration or is it anger? And so you may have different things to do with that. We've actually even seen anger come out as hunger, and
Mm.
so helping them to understand. Then the second thing is give them options for dealing with those. What are healthy ways? And
Right.
literally sitting with them. This is one of the ones that we're actually going to break down a little bit more in our prevention in my kitchen, because this one's really big. So, what exactly can you do? Give them options, help them to see, okay, in the moment, what can you do in your body? What can you do just in terms of like anger? And you can actually give yourself, you could go for a walk. Of course you could go for a walk. Of course you can like go in your room and punch a pillow. Of course, like you could do those things, but that's not, what are you going to do if you're in class? Like you can't go
Right.
for walking. So we'll actually walk folks through just like a process where it helps them to teach, for us and for our kids, what do you do in your body? What thought do you have? How do you, move your body until you can get yourself to a place where you can handle those emotions. That's a good one. We're going to actually dig deeper into that
Absolutely.
one. That's a good.
And that is impactful in so many areas of our kids' lives. Like you said, like what if you're in class? What if you're out, in a situation with friends? Um, you like you said, some of those skills that are taught, coping things aren't always the most constructive and most healthy ways to do it. And they don't always fit in every situation. And so if that's the only way you've trained yourself to handle anger or frustration or whatnot, it doesn't cross over to all the real life circumstances.
No, a
So
hundred
that's a
percent
great one. I
agree.
hope
Yeah,
everybody tunes
that's
into
a good
that.
one. All right, two more. So the next one is relating or connection, right? And this one's
Yeah.
interesting because I actually just did a webinar oh gosh, it's early this week, I think. I don't even know. Maybe it was late last week. Who remembers? But I was doing it with an emergency room doctor. And one of the things that he talked about is this idea that when his kids were younger, he always helped them to find trusted adults who were not him. In other words, he would say, and I agree with this, we did this with our kids as well, where we would say, look, obviously we're trusted adults because research is clear that a strong relationship with at least one trusted adult is one of the biggest protective factors for kids. But friends, you might not want to hear this, especially if your kids are younger. They may get to a point where it's harder to talk to us. And so we are
Right.
constantly working, especially when we do strengthening families, on bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. Those are our big three. And bonding is really, really important, whether your kid is 7 or 17 or 27 or 37 or whatever.
Right.
But bonding, sometimes kids get to an age and they're like, I'm not sure I want to have this conversation with you. And so to expressly help them, sit with them, talk to them about who else could you talk to. And this particular doctor that was giving the presentation said he would identify trusted adults with his kids and then he would contact them and say, can we go to coffee? Or like, you know what I'm saying? So he would like,
Yeah.
he would tell the other adults. So for him, he said that he had his church pastor, another adult mentor, maybe, but that's really important because we need to be connected to them, but they also need to have another place to get connected if they can't
Right.
in a big moment come to us. But for the most part, it's like we have to do all those things like having my time, that one-on-one 10 to 15 minutes alone with our kid each day, where they get to choose what the activity is. And we're just playing along because we're trying to
We want
connect
to
with them.
spend time with our kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Not connect
Yeah.
correcting, not teaching, just connect.
Exactly.
Just connect.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really
It's
good.
yeah, it's those small consistent moments where I think that to me the message whenever we talk about my time, the message that I have like in the back of my mind as like my motivation and my intention with in that
Mm,
time is like I get to spend time with this person. Like
yeah, yeah,
they're one
yeah.
of my favorite people in the whole entire world.
Yeah.
And like I am genuinely interested
Yeah.
in what they're interested in because I want to know them.
And I'm going to say it because, like, we call this podcast Good Friends, Strong Families, and we kind of run it on the premise that everybody needs a good friend if you're a dad
Right.
listening. And the idea is that a good friend would tell you the truth. So I'm going to tell you the truth that if your kid walks in the room and says, hey, mom, can I talk to you? Even if it's like, just to kind of joke around or just like that 100% of the time, unless we're on the phone calling 911, we need to put our phones down.
Right.
Because not like hold the phone and keep looking at it. And listen, I'm preaching to the choir here because I'm just as guilty, not with my kids really so much anymore, but even with my husband. If another person walks in the room that you love and care about, you have got to give them the message that they're important. Take the phone, put it down. Yes, what did you want to talk about?
Right. Make that eye contact and show them that you care. I also want to throw in there, sorry, this is kind of like an aside, but relating and connection, we are emphasizing the importance of that starting at home with parents and other trusted adults. But we
Mm,
also need to not ignore the impact that their other relationships will have on them, and especially their
yes,
mental health. So we as parents should have an idea of who our kids' best friends are.
right.
And um, and I feel like we could probably do a whole nother podcast on this specifically on how to help our kids identify healthy relationships
That's
beyond
good.
just parents, sibling, the ones within our home. Um, and so I just want to throw that in there because those outside connections that will absolutely impact their mental health
Well,
if they're
here's another
in a
relationship
relationship.
that I think is really important, and we could do several podcasts about this one, is grandparents, aunts and uncles, having helping them to have rich relationships with the other people in their family that really care about them, or
Absolutely.
and we're just in an age right now where people find that really challenging. And here's what I would encourage you, families, is to really consider the good outweighing the bad. Obviously, if it goes without saying, if you come from a family where there could be actual harm to your child, right? I mean, that we're not talking about that.
Right.
We are talking about sometimes, and again, we could do a bazillion podcasts about this. Sometimes the people in our family, maybe we're like, ugh, oh, he's got that uncle that always tells the dirty jokes. You know what I mean? Or like, or like every time I send him over to my mom, she always gives him sugar, or you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm just encouraging you to weigh that, right? Weigh that. It is not impossible for you to say to the uncle, listen, I want my kid to know you and to be close to you. And I think that's such an important connection that they have. And so I noticed that you tell a lot of dirty jokes. Can you refrain when just have a
Right.
conversation, or with mom, listen, mom, I prefer you not to give the kids sugar when they're over there. Friends, they're going to break that rule. And so we have to make the decision that the kids eating too much sugar does not even live in the category of my kid has a relationship with this person that thinks they walk on water.
Right.
And sometimes they eat too much sugar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Last one. Functioning. Okay, wait, I want to
Yeah.
repeat them. Can we repeat them? Because we've
Yeah.
got, okay, thinking, feeling, relating, and functioning. What is functioning?
Yeah. So how can you cope in this life? Again, when they're stressed out, school, relationships,
Mm,
friendships, they didn't get a part in the play that they wanted. They like, can you get through your day? Can you get through your week? Um, or are you just shutting down? And
mm,
again, there's going to be the tension, right? But our kids will not build the resilience when
yes.
everything is going easy, and they're not going to build strong mental health unless there is some struggle. But this is about giving them the skills to handle the struggle. Um,
Yes.
and so, reminding them like you are capable, you can do this, coaching them through it, asking them like, well, what's your next step? What do you want to try next? Um, and I know that you and McKinley are going to dive much deeper into that in the live class at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, we actually are. Yeah, we're actually going to go into, and here's why, because this is one of those areas where you need skills, you need to know exactly what to do. So some of this is actually about talking, right? This is about like being able to shift the way that we talk about it, and being able to shift when our kids are scrambling to solve a situation or whatever. But the truth is that if we really are coaches and we really are choosing not to rescue, we do have to be able to put some of those words in our own mouth to like what would a coach say. But also, this is one of those things, friends, where you have to think about this preventatively and be really open about these conversations. So it really is about having those conversations with them before hard things come up, and
Right.
you know what hard things normally come up for your kids, and then helping to give them the skills. We are going to cover this more in our live class. So if you're listening to this at some point later on, you can also find our live class and our Prevention in My Kitchen on our Facebook page, on Delta Prevention Facebook page. All of that is on there, and we're going to give you tons more tools. But at the end of the day, so here's a really important thing, Anna. At the end of the day, when we talk about mental health, we really want you to understand we're not talking about something abstract. We're really talking about like how do you get those skills into your kids. We gave you an example, like what when we talk about thinking or feeling or relating or functioning. We just gave you one example, but at the end of the day, we are family facilitators for strengthening families classes, for other relationship skills building classes. And the reason why is because skills are build upon, build upon, build upon, build upon. So even though we just gave you a quick little example for each one, you can go onto our webpage to find, or onto our Facebook page to find more, because we really want those small shifts to build over time. And when you're building that, it means that mental health isn't something that, oh, you have that or you don't have that,
Right.
but it's something that you're like building this every day. You're building these skills early. You're being open and honest about what it means to be able to navigate tough things, because that's what they need in order to protect them long term. And those
Absolutely.
conversations can be weird and messy. They don't have to be perfect. They can be, and you can come back and say, well, I was reflecting on that conversation we had yesterday, and I kind of feel a little bit like I wasn't clear. Can I just try that again? Just
Right.
be
Yeah, they have to
consistent.
be consistent. And uh the struggles that your kids have today are going to look different than the struggles they have in 2 years, 5 years,
Yes.
etc. So you have to continually have those conversations because how they apply them and what they need to apply them to is going to shift. And so sometimes you need little reminders, right? You're like, you could be
Mm.
coasting through life and yeah, we figured out that hard thing. But at some point, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, another little speed bump will pop up for you. And so it's good to kind of always have these conversations kind of going.
I have to tell you a quick story before we go. One of my adult kids, I was texting back and forth with them, and they made a comment in front of their partner. And when they made that comment, I thought, that's not, no, that's not nice. They weren't talking about the partner. They just said something about somebody else that I thought, oh, that's not good. And
Yeah.
so I waited and sent them a private message. I didn't want to say anything
Yeah.
in front of the partner or whatever. And I sent them a private message and I said, this is what I heard you say. And this is why I think you should not have said that. And when I did that, they sent me a message back and said, thank you for saying that. That wasn't what I meant. I meant this other thing. And so I recognize that what I said might not have come across well.
Right.
So the thing about it is, this kid is in their 30s. Like, you never stop helping them to become a better version of themselves. And they never stop helping us become a better version of ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's not just because it's not because we're trying to perfect one another. It's because we're trying to make life easier for one another.
Yeah.
And
And
you
that's
can
also a
always
great
help.
example of maintaining connection.
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes it's easy to think like, oh, they're 18, they've graduated high school, we've done our job. No, no, no.
Yeah. No.
We have to keep that connection and feed it and nourish it. And I mean, if we value it,
So
and
good.
I believe we do, that's why we're here. So
Right. Right. And we're not raising kids who don't struggle. We're raising kids who can handle life. And
yeah,
that's part of it. They
absolutely.
have to handle life when they become parents, when their kids are in elementary and middle and high school. I mean, just life just keeps going on. And the more we do this when they're young, the easier it'll be when they're older. This
Yeah,
was fun.
absolutely. I'm
This was
excited
fun.
to see the rest of the month as well and sharpen those skills. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. And thank all of you for listening. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please share this with other people that you think might really like it. You can always check us out on Instagram, or you can check us out even on Facebook. When you're looking for us, you're looking for Good Friends, Strong Families, but we also are a part of Delta Prevention. So you can find more resources on deltaprevention.org or our Facebook page on Delta Prevention. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Anna, for being here.
thank
That was
you.
awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.